Have you ever wondered what happens after your last breath? Is death really the end? Or does something mysterious await on the other side? Could our souls travel through realms that are beyond our comprehension? Or do we dissolve into nothingness? These are the questions that have puzzled humanity for centuries, and the answers may not be as far away as you think. Welcome, fellow seeker, to a deep exploration of one of the most enigmatic and profound teachings in Tibetan Buddhism, the Bardo Thodol, more commonly known in the West as the Tibetan Book of the Dead. Imagine this, a guide, not for the living, but for the dead, a spiritual roadmap that helps the soul navigate the afterlife. Intrigued? Let's dive in and see what wisdom we can uncover. The Bardo Thodol is not just a guide to dying, it's a guide to living and to understanding what happens after we take our final breath. It was created by the legendary Padmasambhava, a figure so revered in Tibetan Buddhism that he's often called Guru Rinpoche, meaning precious master. Born in India in the 8th century, Padmasambhava is credited with bringing Buddhism to Tibet, but he was no ordinary monk. Padmasambhava was a yogi and spiritual teacher who mastered powerful mystical practices that allowed him to transcend the limitations of the material world. His teachings went far beyond traditional Buddhism, embracing deep spiritual knowledge and even magic. But perhaps his most profound gift to humanity was the creation of the Bardo Thodol, a guide to what happens after death. From a young age, Padmasambhava displayed extraordinary spiritual abilities. He was recognized as a Mahasiddha, someone who had attained a level of spiritual realization so high it granted them special, almost supernatural powers. It was these powers that allowed him to accomplish things that seemed impossible, from taming fierce spirits to healing the sick. Padmasambhava was invited to Tibet by King Trisong Detsen, who sought to spread Buddhism across Tibet and unify the people spiritually. At the time, Tibet was a spiritual melting pot, steeped in animist and shamanic beliefs rooted in the Bon religion, the indigenous spiritual practice of Tibet. These beliefs were strongly entrenched in the culture, and many saw the arrival of Buddhism as a challenge to their way of life. Padmasambhava wasn't afraid of the resistance he faced. Instead, he embraced it, using his deep knowledge of Tantra, meditation, and magic. He was able to integrate many of the local Bon deities and practices into Tibetan Buddhism. This allowed the Tibetan people to feel that Buddhism wasn't something foreign, but a natural continuation of their own spiritual traditions. Padmasambhava's ability to bridge the gap between the old and the new made him a central figure in Tibetan Buddhism, and it's why he's still revered today as a master of deep wisdom. But Padmasambhava didn't stop at guiding the living. He knew that death was a critical part of the spiritual journey, and he wanted to ensure that people had a guide for what comes after the physical body dies. Padmasambhava understood that death is not the end. Rather, it's a transition, an opening to a new possibility. When we die, our minds enter a unique state where the usual distractions of the body no longer exist. This state, Padmasambhava realized, is the perfect opportunity for spiritual liberation. The problem, however, is that most people aren't prepared for what comes next. At the moment of death, the soul is often lost in confusion, fear, and illusions, missing the chance for enlightenment. This is where the Bardo Thodol comes in. The Bardo Thodol is a map of the soul's journey through the afterlife. It describes the stages, or bardos, that every soul goes through after death. In these stages, the soul is presented with opportunities to recognize its true nature, break free from attachments, and attain liberation. However, these opportunities aren't always easy to recognize. The Bardo Thodol teaches that if you understand these stages and are prepared, you can break free from the cycle of death and rebirth, samsara, and attain enlightenment. But if you're unprepared, you might be swept up in fear, confusion, and attachment, missing the chance for liberation. The first stage of the Bardo Thodol is called the Chikhai Bardo, or the moment of death itself. This is the moment when the physical body dissolves and the mind is freed from its earthly constraints. As the body breaks down, the soul is said to encounter the primordial clear light, a dazzling, pure light that represents the true nature of the mind. This clear light is the essence of reality, a state of pure consciousness, free from duality, fear, and attachment. For those who are spiritually prepared, recognizing the clear light as their true nature brings instant liberation, nirvana. In this moment, the soul is free from the cycle of birth and death, never to return again. But for those who are unprepared, the clear light can be overwhelming and terrifying. The soul may not recognize it, and instead of embracing it, may retreat in fear, missing the chance for liberation and moving on to the next stage of the Bardos. The second stage of the Bardo Thodol is the Chönyid Bardo, or the Bardo of visions. In this stage, the soul is no longer confined by the physical body and enters a realm where it encounters projections of its own mind. These projections can appear as peaceful, benevolent beings, or as terrifying, wrathful visions. The peaceful beings represent the enlightened qualities of the soul, while the wrathful visions reflect the darker, more intense aspects of the soul's past. These projections are deeply personal, rooted in the soul's karmic history, its accumulated actions, thoughts, and emotions from past lives. For the unprepared, these visions can be overwhelming and confusing. The soul may doubt what it's seeing, leading it to miss the opportunity to recognize the true nature of these projections, and ultimately, its own true nature. The Bardo Thodol is not just a guide for the dead, it's a guide for the living too. By understanding the teachings in the Bardo Thodol, we can prepare ourselves for death while we're still alive. We can learn to let go of our attachments, fears, and illusions, so that when the time comes, we can recognize the true nature of reality and achieve liberation. But perhaps more importantly, the Bardo Thodol teaches us to live with awareness, to recognize the illusion of separation, and to embrace the truth that we are not separate from the world around us. In the end, the teachings of the Bardo Thodol are a reminder that the journey of life and death is not something to fear, but something to embrace with an open heart and mind. In the world of Tibetan Buddhism, there's a fascinating concept known as the Bardo, which refers to the transitional states of the mind between death and rebirth. These stages offer deep insights into the nature of life, death, and the path to enlightenment. One of the most profound teachings from the Bardo Thodol, often called the Tibetan Book of the Dead, is about the stages the soul goes through, with each stage being an opportunity for liberation or further entanglement in the cycle of suffering, known as samsara. Let's dive into the intense and transformative experience of the wrathful vision stage, and then look at the final stage, the Sidpa Bardo, where the soul faces the critical choice of its next rebirth. Imagine this: After death, your soul finds itself in a space that's completely free from the physical world. This is the Chönyid Bardo, where you encounter visions that arise not from the outside world, but from your own mind. These visions begin peacefully, almost like gentle reminders of your true nature, but soon become more intense and unsettling. These are the wrathful deities, terrifying beings that seem to represent your deepest fears, anger, and unprocessed emotions. But here's the twist. These wrathful figures are not evil spirits out to harm you. They are not separate beings at all. They are expressions of your own mind, representing the attachments, fears, and desires that have kept you locked in the cycle of suffering. In a sense, these deities are like the shadows of your own psyche, reflecting the emotional baggage that you've carried through life. In the Chönyid Bardo, the mind is free from the limitations of the body, and everything becomes amplified. It's like a dream, but far more vivid and clear. The visions you experience are incredibly intense because your mind is no longer filtered by the senses. Everything that has been buried deep inside, your fears, repressed desires, and unresolved emotions, emerges in a pure, unfiltered form. It's an opportunity to face yourself like never before. This is where the real challenge comes in. Most of us are not prepared for such an experience. The visions are so real and intense that it can be easy to get lost in them, to believe that they are happening outside of you. But if you can stay aware during this stage, you can realize that these visions are not real. They are just projections of your own mind. They are not external forces controlling you. Instead, they are simply opportunities for growth, to face and transcend the parts of yourself that keep you bound in fear and attachment. At this stage, the Bardo Thodol offers a powerful instruction. Focus on the clear light. The clear light is the primordial essence of the mind, the pure, unchanging radiance that is always present, even when the mind is clouded by illusions. It is the true nature of all beings, the underlying reality that remains unchanged no matter how strong the emotional or mental projections become. Seeing the clear light is key to liberation. In a way, it's like trying to spot the sun behind the clouds. Even though the clouds may be thick and dark, the sun is always there, shining brightly. The challenge here is that the mind, now completely freed from the body, is so caught up in these intense visions that it's hard to see through them. But if the soul can recognize that these visions are mere creations of the mind, it can transcend them and find peace. This is why spiritual training in life is so important. By practicing detachment and mindfulness while alive, we can prepare ourselves to face the Chönyid Bardo with clarity and awareness. If we can recognize that all our fears, desires, and attachments are just illusions, then we can find the clear light and be liberated from the cycle of rebirth. But here's the catch. Fear and attachment are powerful forces. When the wrathful deities appear, they can provoke deep, primal fear. This fear makes the soul feel separate from the visions, as if they are something external that needs to be escaped from. At the same time, attachment can cause the soul to fixate on the peaceful visions, wanting to hold on to them and avoid the wrathful ones. Both fear and attachment keep the soul stuck in the cycle of suffering. The key to liberation is to recognize that these visions, whether peaceful or wrathful, are empty. They have no inherent reality. Now we move to the final stage, the Sidpa Bardo. This is the moment when the soul faces the crucial decision of its next body. It's a point where all the actions, thoughts, and desires accumulated over countless lifetimes come to fruition. It's as though everything you've done, thought, and felt has led you to this moment. The Sidpa Bardo is influenced by the karmic energy you've built up, which acts like a magnetic force, pulling you towards certain experiences and circumstances. During this stage, the soul is drawn to visions of couples coming together, a metaphor for the creation of new life. The soul, driven by desire, fear, and unresolved attachments, is unconsciously guided toward a new body. But here's the thing. The soul is not consciously choosing its next life. It's being led by the invisible hand of karma, which shapes its next rebirth based on its past actions and desires. This is where the real opportunity for liberation lies. If the soul can remain detached and aware, it can see that these visions are not real. They are just projections of the mind. The Bardo Thodol suggests that the soul should not be drawn into the cycle of rebirth. Instead, it should recognize that the desire for a new body is just another form of attachment. And by letting go of this attachment, the soul can break free from the cycle of death and rebirth altogether. However, for most beings, the desire for rebirth is so strong that it's nearly impossible to resist. The soul is drawn to the urge to exist again, to take on a new body and continue its journey. This desire is so powerful that it becomes like a storm, pushing the soul into the next cycle of life. But the Sidpa Bardo is not just a moment of choosing a body. It's a chance to break free from the cycle of rebirth. The Bardo Thodol teaches that by contemplating our desires and fears while we are alive, we can prepare for this moment of choice. Meditation, reflection on death, and spiritual practice all help to cultivate the detachment necessary to remain unaffected by the illusions that arise in the Sidpa Bardo. If we can see through these illusions, we can merge with the clear light and reach enlightenment. Life and death are deeply connected, and the cycle of rebirth is not just random. It reflects our choices, our attachments, and our perceptions. By freeing ourselves from these attachments, we can break the cycle of rebirth and achieve true liberation. This is the ultimate goal of spiritual practice, to reach a state where there is no more rebirth, no more attachment, and no more suffering. The Bardo Thodol isn't just a religious text. It's a tool for self-awareness. It's a roadmap for understanding our minds and our destinies. It shows us that death is not the end, but the beginning of a new chapter. And perhaps the most important question of all, as Ram Dass put it, is, how much did you love? So, what about you? Are you ready for the final journey? Are you prepared to let go of everything you think you are? By reflecting on these teachings, we can not only prepare for death, but also learn to live more fully. If this exploration of the afterlife resonates with you, share this video and subscribe to the channel. Let us know in the comments what fascinates you most about life after death. The path of self-knowledge is long, but together, we can explore the mysteries of existence. Thank you for watching.